After Brexit, Britain wants to remain a good friend and neighbour to Europe. Yet I know there are some voices calling for a punitive deal that punishes Britain and discourages other countries from taking the same path. And while I am confident that this scenario need never arise, while I am sure a positive agreement can be reached, I am equally clear that no deal for Britain is better than a bad deal for Britain.
Donc ils veulent être un peu plus durs, quoi. Non. C'est pour le reste.
Ça va. We call for 5 minutes.
Mag ik het op speaker staan zodat ik kan meevolgen?
Tu ne fais pas de bruit, hein. Maak je lawaai. Hè?
Nee, nee, natuurlijk niet. Ik zit hier gewoon.
Hallo, I'm here.
1 second. 1 second, I gotta put you.
No, I'm talking. Ik denk dat het over hem gaat. Allô? Ça va bien. Ça a été un petit peu les 2 derniers jours, Michel?
Je te raconte pas. Si je parle franchement entre nous deux là, il n'y a aucune justification de discuter de l'avenir de l'Union européenne avec le Royaume-Uni en le mélangeant aux dettes.
Non, non, tout à fait d'accord.
Et ça, demain, je vais assez brutalement, enfin, calmement, mais clairement rappeler que c'est pas négociable.
D'accord.
Merci.
Bon travail, continuation demain.
Ne dites pas tout ça publiquement.
Non, 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 je vais pas le faire, Salut, salut Michel, ciao.
The Brexit referendum in June 2016 shook the European Union to its core. Brussels straight away started preparations for what they assumed would be a tough divorce battle, because the British are famous diplomats and negotiators. The European Parliament set up the Brexit steering group, led by Guy Verhofstadt. Michel Barnier was appointed chief EU Brexit negotiator. Secrecy was paramount.
Oui, il filme, mais il n'y a que problème, c'est ça.
Vous filmez pas là?
High-level international diplomacy and negotiations like the Brexit divorce define the lives of millions. They are carried out on our behalf as citizens, but take place mostly behind closed doors. We rarely get to see what really happens. Guy Verhofstadt and his team broke that rule and gave me, a Belgian filmmaker, access to their side of the dispute during the 2 whole years of the negotiations.
They're going nowhere.
They're stuck. And you were super stressed. Did you see it?
Yeah. But we've seen how desperate the situation is.
And then they say, no, but we promised to leave.
Yeah.
And
that is not leave. Is not leave enough.
Yeah.
No, it's leave, but not enough, because people are gonna think it's the same. It's not the same.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
You're not there, eh? You're not very close to a solution, eh?
No.
They will stay.
The worst possible outcome.
Guy Maurice Marie-Louise Verhofstadt is a former Prime Minister of Belgium. He led his country in the heart of Europe for almost 10 years. But whenever he had a moment to spare, he put his 2 kids in the car and drove to Italy, where he restored an old villa with a vineyard. 7 years ago, he started making wine, around 3,000 bottles a year.
Dus de politiek die werkt er ook wel een nieuwe uitzending.
As a Prime Minister of Belgium, Verhofstadt refined the art of compromise, working in coalitions with both the left and from the right. After 10 years in power, rather than retire, he moved to the European stage, where he became one of the most vocal and passionate members of the European Parliament. The result of the Brexit referendum in June 2016 devastated him. According to his wife Dominique, he watched the news all night and kept repeating, "It can't be true." Verhofstadt and his wife have been together since they were 17. Dominique Verkinderen has her own career as a professional classical singer. The couple spend a lot of time apart, but Umbria brings them together. Physically, at least.
Hier.
Verhofstadt is not there really. He's in Brussels with his Belgian speechwriter Bram Delen. They are finalizing a speech on what Europe means for the Brexit coordinator of the European Parliament.
C'est pas le chocolat, c'est pas la bière, c'est pas Tintin, qui est typiquement belge, non, c'est notre amour pour l'Europe. Et ça, c'est pas une question de choix. Chez nous, c'est une question existentielle. Existentielle. Notre pays, nos terres ont trop longtemps été le champ de bataille de toute l'Europe. Ils sont tout passés chez nous. Les Français, les Allemands 2 fois, les Espagnols, les Hollandais, les Autrichiens. Guerre de religion, guerre de succession, guerre de tranchées avec des millions de morts et la première utilisation d'armes chimiques. Il n'y a que l'Europe qui peut nous sauver de cette misère, je dirais, du passé.
We show here, dear friends, it are not only nationalists and populists, but also Europeans who can fight back in the coming years. To keep our independency towards Putin, towards Trump, towards everybody who wants, in fact, to be a threat of us.
As Brexit coordinator for the European Parliament, Guy Verhofstadt will have to use the skills he developed as Prime Minister at the head of coalition governments. Directing behind the scenes, he has to make sure that over 700 parliamentarians from across the political spectrum speak with one voice during the negotiations. It's the painstaking and tedious side of democracy. His main aide and fellow sufferer is Guillaume McLaughlin. As a child of 6, Guillaume helped his British father and French mother campaign for the UK to be part of Europe. Together they put pro-European stickers on cars. Now Guillaume must help navigate Britain's exit.
Yeah. Nobody had something against the tax spoilers. This will be an unprecedented and regrettable event in the history of the European Union.
Yeah, somebody said this was no good.
Yeah, it was okay. Even the word regrettable. Yeah, we want to say that's regrettable. I wanted to get rid of regrettable, and then they say, no, don't get rid of regrettable. It's regrettable. You could start with saying, whereas this will be an unprecedented and regrettable event. Point. Yeah? Yeah, but do it now.
Yeah, but I know what.
No, not the here you have to do it.
Yeah, but here.
No, that's your reaction on it. That's his text of Nick. Okay,
This
change
is my
it.
text from last night.
Yeah, but that is not important. It's now what we decide now is important.
Guy Verhofstadt had to fight hard for the European Parliament to have a role in the Brexit negotiations alongside the European Council and the European Commission.
What they are proposing is simply to say, oh, we go forward with the Brexit negotiations, but without a parliament. You are not aware that we have to approve these arrangements at the end? Do you want that we open separate negotiations with the British authorities? Isn't that what you want? You can get it, huh? Parallel negotiations. Maybe I can give you a famous phrase of Lyndon B. Johnson. He said once, better to have him inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. Maybe that's a good reality that you can recall to the European Council. Thank you.
Verhofstadt won. The European Parliament would be fully involved in the Brexit negotiations together with the two other big European institutions. The European Council, where the heads of the member states gather, and the European Commission, Europe's vast civil service.
We don't have any clarification for timing for tomorrow.
Next, Verhofstadt set up the Brexit steering group, with representatives of all the major political groups in the European Parliament. The Brexit steering group spent several months drafting guidelines for the negotiations. Tonight, they will finalize them, ahead of the start of the talks. Idel Cross, the Irish organizer of the team, deals with the practical details.
But we could actually deliberately keep a space free for Brock here. That we could wangle. I can put a dossier on it or something.
What are little name tags? Elmar. Roberto.
Herbook. Schatzi. Go Schatzi. That's it.
Bram Delen will record the meeting on his mobile phone.
So before the meeting, you would ask who would vote for the text studies. If we have a majority, we stop the meeting. Very good. Good proposal.
I have enough of this text.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because you read always the same. You say, yeah, and is that not already done?
Yeah, I found that the paragraph 6 is a bit too weak. I think it should be more clear that it's full citizenship.
Stop it. I don't want to hear that. I want to. There is there a camera. You see that? The reason why it is there, I want at least one image of our meetings. Then I come to the general principles. We have deleted in 5 resorting to threats. You asked for that, so that's out. We have in 6 changed in would in line 4 in should.
Yes.
I disagree with this. Okay, so just
why I disagree with
no,
this?
I fully agree with what you have agreed, and I agree with you. But I'm saying that by saying it this way, we don't sort of put the condition for negotiation that this should be ensured in the negotiation, that these things are ruled out.
I work better with what? I also. And if we made an agreement with the Brits, then we're gonna all the 100 of these. This is the Brexit steering group for 2 years together. Yay! And then I think the transition period also. Again, 3 years. At least 3. At least 3.
The members of the Brexit steering group have known each other for many years, but that does not mean they fully trust each other. The guidelines they worked on were supposed to remain secret, but they are leaked to the press the evening before Theresa May triggers Article 50, the official declaration that in 2 years' time the UK is leaving the EU.
Major changes?
Guardian, I've seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you surprised? Honestly, Guillaume.
How can you do
Ali.
things then, huh?
Well, it's not bad that it's only today that it's in the Guardian.
Yeah, that surprises me that it's only today.
God save the Queen.
Are you honestly surprised?
I'm really pissed off.
Yeah, if you know it's very few
really?
people who had it very
It's
present.
Brock, Gualtieri.
Yeah, you need to be able to trust those people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how can you do
We're
stuff?
going to have to negotiate with these guys for the next
How do you
year
do
and a
stuff?
half. How do you do?
How do you do it? I mean, I think it's really
crazy.
big shit. It's
It
really
surprises me that you're surprised. But okay.
honestly, where do we live then? You know, if
It's crazy.
Wie staan wel in willen?
Iemand van de VRT.
Verhofstadt has gathered his team to prepare a press conference about the triggering of Article 50. As usual, he has lots of thoughts to share.
An absolute priority in the
I should say that it will be Parliament who will adopt this withdrawal agreement and the new partnership. That is a first thing that I have.
Yeah.
Then I give to you. And the second thing that I have is this one. Then,
Do you want me to sit here and hold your hand and help you read Huff's writing?
Oh yeah, one person with an extra memory would be helpful.
The members have to say.
The point is, do we put the punitive expedition like?
No.
No.
No. But we don't need it. It's
But let me be clear that it can never be better outside the union and inside.
It will never be better. Or can never be better. Can never be better means we're going to make an effort that it's not going to be better. Will means we believe genuinely that they will be worse off.
It will be.
There's the difference.
Yeah, but let me be clear, it will never be better.
There you go.
The Article 50 process is now underway, and in accordance with the wishes of the British people, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union. The referendum last June was divisive at times. Not everyone shared the same point of view or voted the same way. But, Mr. Speaker, when I sit around the negotiating table in the months ahead, I will represent every person in the United Kingdom, young and old, rich and poor, city, town, country, and all the villages and hamlets in between. We are one great union of people and nations with a proud history and a bright future.
She's saying things that everybody knows are completely untrue. They're more than ever united. But it's the opposite.
Article 50 is triggered. The EU and the UK now have 2 years to negotiate their divorce. But within a month, Theresa May has to admit what Bram Dalen had already said.
At this moment of enormous national significance, there should be unity here in Westminster. But instead, there is division. Division in Westminster will risk our ability to make a success of Brexit, and it will cause damaging uncertainty and instability to the country. So we need a general election, and we need one now.
May hoped to strengthen her majority in Parliament, but her gamble fails. She loses it, and 72 days of negotiating time.
Dat hebben geen meerderheid. Maar ze kunnen natuurlijk een DUP, de unionisten van Noord-Ierland erbij pakken. En dan zou het kunnen zijn dat ze misschien een meerderheid van 1 of 2 zetels hebben. Dat is waanzin.
There's a draft tweet. Clouds over the British Isles, but in Brussels, clear sky, perfect conditions to plan the future. Non. Oui. Et Nick m'envoie parce qu'il m'envoie des trucs en parallèle parce qu'il dit terrible. The tweet is awful.
But I agree, but give me another.
Agree. What's your alternative?
C'est quoi ça? Beurre?
Sirop de liège.
Ah.
Merci.
Ah, si moi j'ai le droit aussi un truc comme ça. Ça c'est Ah, ça c'est.
Il y a du miel aussi si tu veux. Non, il n'y en a plus.
Non, je veux pas de miel.
Merci.
Ok.
Merci monsieur. Là c'est embêtant ça. Et bien sûr le Brexit clock il tique hein. The clock keeps ticking. There's no mechanism to say, oh, it's a bit difficult now, we pause.
Weakens the position of the UK. What's happening?
May resign in 2 hours. They'll chop off her head, huh? They'll chop off her head. They're ruthless, huh, the Tories? They're fucking ruthless, huh?
Theresa May remains Prime Minister. But to have a majority in the UK Parliament, she does indeed need to make a deal with a small party from Northern Ireland, the DUP. They give her 10 crucial extra seats. Meanwhile, the Brexit negotiations still haven't started. So when Michel Barnier and his Norwegian team leader George Rikeles come to give the Brexit steering group a first update on their work, they don't have much to report.
Normally we had foreseen that this is the first meeting in the official cycle of negotiations. But, like we say in English, well, we don't know when this official cycle of negotiations will really start.
Quel sera le négociateur britannique? Je ne sais pas. Je vois bien que M. Davis a été nommé à nouveau secrétaire d'État pour le Brexit. Je vois, il est venu me voir hier auprès de Mme May, dans son cabinet, l'homme de confiance, c'est Ollie Robbins, mais je ne peux pas dire quelle sera. La seule chose que je me permets de dire comme négociateur européen, c'est nous voulons un interlocuteur qui soit available, stable and reliable.
Ouais. Bon, on ne peut pas tout demander des Britanniques. Alman.
Thank you very much. We hear now all the time that because Britain is in a mess, we have to move a little bit to help them and so on. That would be, I think, tactically totally wrong situation. Tactically totally wrong decision, but the temptation to do so will become very high. I'm very clear that we have to do nothing. We are ready, and they have to come. We have to wait, but the air will become thinner and thinner because we lose time.
The negotiations between the EU and the UK finally start in June 2017. The British immediately want to talk about their future relationship with the EU. But Michel Barnier says no. First, 3 divorce issues need to be settled. Financial obligations, the rights of EU citizens living in the UK, and the Irish border. Barnier calls it sequencing. First the divorce, then the new relationship.
We've had a robust but constructive thought system. Clearly there's a lot left to talk about and further work before we can resolve it. Ultimately getting to a solution will require flexibility on both sides.
Thank you all for your presence. Thank you.
The EU delegation was well prepared. It seems to me, we can speak frankly between us, better than the UK, which allowed us to set the tone and to set the agenda. David Davis l'a dit avant même le premier round, nous pouvons tout faire, y compris l'accord de libre-échange et le divorce, tout ça en 2 ans. Je le dis, c'est techniquement et politiquement et juridiquement impossible. Et donc on va faire le sequencing.
Two weeks later, the European Parliament relocates from Brussels to Strasbourg. It does so once a month for 4 days. Erik Janda, Guy Verhofstadt's personal assistant, has a camper to sleep in. And every morning in Strasbourg, he does the same thing, gets his boss a croissant. The start of the Brexit negotiations was a relief, but it's also a problem for Guy Verhofstadt and the European Parliament. Michel Barnier will now get most of the media attention. To keep the Brexit steering group in the picture, Bram is asked to write an article that can be published in all major European newspapers. Verhofstadt wants the Parliament to carve out its own pivotal role.
We're going to now be weeks and weeks we're going to work, and Parliament will not be heard in this whole thing. if we don't say something.
I think that the article was very good, but was too harsh as a tones. This is signed by all the people involved in the negotiation. We are not here to convince them that Brexit was a mistake. We are not here to make fun of them. So we should a little bit more, because otherwise we just put oil on fire.
But Roberta, partly you have right, but not everything. For example, what's written is UK proposal and so on, and then it was a cold shower. Such sentence we should not delete.
Yeah, it needs to be printed. All the newspapers need to take it. If it's not sexy as article, then they don't take it.
Yeah, but
if you want to see it in every newspaper next week, everywhere, and make it, then you need a lot of. Not insult. It's not insulting saying that it was for us a cold shower.
Yeah, but that's
our role is different as the negotiator. He has to use us in saying, you know, this, you have seen our parliament, how they react? It's impossible. I never will go to the parliament. You look how the reaction is.
I did.
That's the idea. Okay, what are we going to do? All this. Who is going to do it?
Normally my colleague Bram is doing now, but I know you were going to make all of these very constructive comments.
3 weeks later, the negotiations are in a rut over the financial settlement.
Since we joined the common market on the 1st of January 1973, until the date we leave, we will have given the EU and its predecessors, in today's money, in real terms, a total of £209 billion. Will the Foreign Secretary make it clear to the EU that if they want a penny piece more, they can go whistle?
I'm sure that my honourable friend's words will have broken like a thunderclap over Brussels, and I think to go whistle is an entirely appropriate expression.
I don't want to make any comment. I'm not hearing any whistling, just a clock ticking.
Vous avez avancé un petit peu quand même pour la semaine prochaine.
Ah bah oui, parce qu'à force de faire de pression, moi, c'était très brutal cette semaine.
Oui, c'était très bien votre petit whistling and clock ticking.
Quand il nous dit allez vous faire foutre, non mais même la présence de police, moi je peux pas venir à l'hôpital, mais jusqu'à hier c'est pas
Parce qu'il aime plutôt être dans la bagarre pour...
Comme je vais vous le dire.
Michel, what we do if there is no paper on financial settlement by the end of vote?
Nous n'acceptons pas de payer à 27 les engagements pris à 28. Ils nous disent, c'est aux 27 de se débrouiller. Sous-entendu, les paiements selon les engagements pris, c'est à vous de les payer. On se quitte et vous continuez à payer les pensions de tout le monde durablement. La même chose pour la recherche, la même chose pour le prêt à l'Ukraine.
It's the middle of the summer of 2017 and the Brexit negotiations are going nowhere. But Verhofstadt does. He's off racing to Silverstone in the UK. If the EU and the UK cannot make a deal in 18 months, this border could become a closed border again, with the threat of long queues of trucks, arduous checks of every import and export, and ordinary citizens needing a visa to travel. Without a deal, the UK risks becoming a country with the same relationship to the EU as China, Russia or Zimbabwe. For Verhofstadt, a no-deal exit of the UK would be a horror, because he likes the British almost as much as he loves his classic Aston Martin. Verhofstadt doesn't do much racing in Silverstone because his Aston Martin keeps breaking down. To make things worse, UK Brexit Secretary David Davis is there to witness his pain.
It's a difficult track, and the brakes go, it goes like that, and only when you're 20 centimeters from the end, then they brake. When you go, and then at the end, when you go, so you brake on the motor also, and then you go with it. And then you go in, and then he does understeer.
On the way back to Belgium, for 7 long hours, Verhofstadt checks old cars on his mobile, in the same detailed, concentrated way he studies Brexit files.
C'est tous mes médicaments que je dois prendre pour le cœur.
Ah oui.
Ah ouais, ça c'est pour baisser le nombre de battements du cœur jusqu'à 50.
Ah oui.
Parce que j'ai des stents. Ça c'est pour rendre le sang fluide.
Ah oui, ça je prends.
Ça c'est pour diminuer
Cholestérol.
le cholestérol et les statines.
Oui, oui, moi j'en prends aussi.
Et ça c'est pour continuer à boire le vin.
Il prend les médicaments pour corriger, il n'y en prend le 4e pour permettre tout ce qui est interdit. Ça c'est une tactique. Moi j'en ai 2 comme ça, moi. Mais je ne fais pas d'effet comme ça, je ne les mets pas devant moi quand j'en prends un le soir et un le matin.
Et donc quand je vais sur mon vélo, j'ai encore une 5e petite pilule pour ouvrir les
Damned if I know where to stick them. I swear, I have no clue. Oh my god. Panic.
Alors tu es reparti en Italie et puis tu...
J'ai d'abord vu M. Brext à Silverstone, si tu veux voir les photos. Bon, on ne va pas dire rien du tout, naturellement. Je vais simplement ça c'est la voiture. Hein.
Moi je dois aller là.
La vôtre?
Oui, ça va. C'est très british, hein?
Ah oui, c'est E-Type, non? C'est ça?
C'est ce qu'ils essaient de faire avec le Brexit, hein?
C'est ça.
Ouais. On utilise les voitures de la restaurer.
Ils essaient de restaurer une...
Et d'aller vite.
Hein? Je trouve que beaucoup de gens britanniques se laissent.
Ils disent, s'il y a des contrôles aux frontières en Irlande du Nord, c'est la faute des 27. Nous, on n'a pas besoin de contrôle. Nous, on peut tout laisser passer, c'est pas grave. Et donc, le problème est un problème européen. Et si jamais on devait retourner à des contrôles / une frontière physique d'une manière ou d'une autre, ce sera la faute des Européens. Et l'autre sujet hyper intéressant, c'est qu'ils prennent le cas de la frontière en Irlande du Nord comme test case pour tout le reste des frontières. C'est-à-dire que plus on sera flexible sur cette frontière-là, plus ils vont exiger la même flexibilité sur le reste de leurs frontières.
2 weeks later, Verhofstadt travels to Ireland. Idel wants her boss to see for himself what Brexit may do to her country. Idel grew up in the Republic in the south, the part of the island that will remain a member of the European Union. Northern Ireland will leave the EU together with the United Kingdom. But it's hard to see where the north stops and where the Republic in the south begins. The road marks should go from white to yellow.
No, that's a double yellow line. That just means you can't park there.
Yeah, that's something different.
It's a single yellow line.
Hi. Are we in the Republic or not? We are in the Republic, Maria?
No, you're not. You have to cross that bridge and change your money here before you
change your money and see that it is yellow and not white.
I'm Mary. Sorry,
And that's all.
we're running a bit
The old
behind.
custom post that was well blown up.
No, it's here.
Over there.
No, just there.
No, that's the Irish one.
That's the Irish
This
one.
is the Northern Ireland one across here.
That's crazy, if you look to the...
If you look
it's like in a war zone.
That's what it was like right along the border. Huge military infrastructure. That happened in the early 60s, the roads were closed, originally closed. I remember going through a border, a British Army checkpoint,
on one side of the border, a southern Irish army checkpoint on the other side of the border, into Black Lion 300 yards further, stopped by the guards who were backed up by the Irish army. I went ahead into Belcoo. I had to go through the Irish customs first, cross the bridge, go through the northern customs, and then I had to go up to the police barracks in the centre of Belcoo, all the time being watched by a camera. I don't want to see those troubles coming back. Europe brought peace to me.
The conflict on the Irish island ended in 1998. The soldiers disappeared. The control posts as well. The border became invisible. But when Northern Ireland leaves the EU together with the UK, everything that crosses the border between the two parts of the island will have to be checked again.
I've been a soldier for 35 years, and part of that time was spent standing on the border at border checkpoints, checking vehicles across. I lost many colleagues killed on the border, many families bereaved. There was many innocent women and children killed on the border, many families bereaved. There was many terrorists killed on the border, many families bereaved. If we have a hard border of any shape or form, north or south, we will create a flashpoint for trouble once again. If we use this as a bargaining chip, then we are going to create and fill more coffins, and there will be more bereaved people.
I was never in Northern Ireland. I was never in Belfast. But I went there, and I thought, yeah, it's already 20 years, not longer on the television screen. Problems are solved. It's a little bit like Berlin. The Berlin Wall has disappeared and everything goes well. And I can tell you it was a shock, because the reality is that the problems are not over. And the worst thing what can happen is that we lose the peace that Europe has brought there. Where you see the pictures of young people of 15, 16 years old who died in the conflict, based on nationalism, based on extremism. And so to secure that this violence doesn't return, that is, I think, an absolute priority for our House. And that means lining up.
Shortly after his Ireland trip, Guy Verhofstadt is invited to the UK permanent residence in Brussels for tea with David Davis, the UK Brexit Secretary.
David Davis explained to us that Ireland's not a problem. They've got lots of control systems. They know everybody who's going in and out across the border. They have automatic control, and they'll take a loss in the excise duties that they're getting, but it doesn't matter. It really matters. So basically, we don't really give a fuck what goes through the border. In any case, we know who the baddies are. There might be a problem with terrorism. If there's a problem with terrorism, that might be a problem. But okay, if a terrorist,
we're gonna find them.
That was more or less what he said.
So head in the fucking clouds.
That same afternoon, Verhofstadt receives a number of UK members of parliament.
You come to inform me what the solution is for Ireland and Northern Ireland? I hope so. That,
I know that you're upset that Britain's leaving the EU, but to politicise this decision to punish Britain, you're punishing Ireland as well. We need an open border for travel and for trade.
But we're punishing nobody. What we are talking is the consequence of a decision. That's the point. Take, for example, for one or other reason, there is no deal. We have not started to talk about no deal. It's the UK side who have started to talk about no deal. No deal is better than a bad deal. Who has said that? We have not said it.
For the United Kingdom as a free trading, seafaring, outward-looking global nation, why do we want to box ourselves in? And the decision's been made, and I say again, Britain will not be imposing a border, so you would have to, the EU would harm the people of Ireland, by imposing this hard border,
Yeah,
that's the
that's
solution.
without a barrier. We don't want a barrier.
So
We have
let's just
already
agree
said
not
it.
to have it and carry on as we are. Isn't that
Yeah,
the
but that
solution?
you don't want because you go out.
No, it's nothing. Yeah, but
Well, Andrew,
okay. All right. Terry, you have it. You have it.
not quite. There's a fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
Actually, it's quite interesting.
But maybe it was better to have it before the referendum than after the referendum.
Yeah, that's okay. But just trying to find out
negative.
I'm most proud of you when you take on a Tory and win. You know that? She's a fucker, yeah? I was delighted. I just
And we are causing the problem.
The EU.
Well, the EU, what does you? You're going out. There is no border. You create a border.
See, that's the game. They're
But
playing
it's good
emotional
that Nick say,
game.
yeah, well, the chicken with claw that comes in from America in there. Oh, all good. I know, our standards. You're going to follow our standards.
But I like
We're
how you
gonna
push
go
back
there.
on the EU. We don't want a border, but you guys are going to impose it, and poor Ireland are going to suffer.
Yeah. You see what that? Yeah. That is.
the game.
Yeah, that's the game. That's the game.
It's an emotional game.
That's the game.
Verhofstadt's meeting with British MPs was dominated by a hard Brexiteer from the Conservative Party. But not all the Conservatives share his ideas. The party led by Theresa May is very divided over Brexit. There are hard Brexiteers who would leave the EU even without a deal. Soft Brexiteers who want a deal that keeps the UK as closely tied to the EU as possible. And Remainers who simply don't want to leave the EU. May has to reconcile all their views, and that's proving tricky. In a speech in Florence in Italy, she admits what Europe had predicted, that the talks may take longer than they first thought.
The United Kingdom will cease to be a member of the European Union on the 29th of March 2019. But the fact is that at that point, neither the UK nor the EU and its member states will be in a position to implement smoothly many of the detailed arrangements that will underpin this new relationship we seek. For example, it will take time to put in place the new immigration system required to retake control of the UK's borders. A period of implementation would be in our mutual interest. And that is why I am proposing that there should be such a period after the UK leaves the EU.
Are you about to leave the nation? Is this move in the right direction? No, tell me now. Tell me right now. I need to hear it from you. Otherwise you're going to not stay. No, I'm going to listen to every single word.
Do you think Theresa May's speech is allowed for a breakthrough in talks?
I'm going to say all this inside. Thank you. Come on, don't be shy. Tell me now.
Have tensions eased between the EU and the UK?
I have to tell you, it is a little bit surrealistic that I am giving a speech about the future of Europe here in London, the capital of a country that is about to leave the Union, while then Prime Minister May gave her speech on Brexit in a European city, in Florence. I think she chose Florence because Florentine politics in the 15th century made her feel at home, I think. You know, backstabbing. You know, backstabbing, betrayal, noble families fighting for power, and so on and so on. So I think that it is an environment that she recognized very well.
Riven by division themselves, the British now tried to divide their opponents. Using the tactic Europe had feared, they tried to bypass the official EU negotiator and start talking to the heads of member states directly, individually. Verhofstadt hears all about it at a gathering of liberal prime ministers of Europe. Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of Holland, was phoned by Theresa May just days before.
I spoke with
Theresa on Friday in close conjunction with the French and the Germans. And my message was that she has to give meat to the sentence in the Florence speech, which was saying we will honor our other commitments, which is the exit bill. And she then said, I can do that, I'll think about it. She spoke with Macron on Sunday, she spoke with Merkel on Monday or Tuesday, and no movement. In the British press it was reported that I would plead for some more flexibility, which is not true. So this was just a spin. So I will tell the British press that they should not listen always to the spin coming out of Downing Street.
J'observe dans le background politique l'intention, on le lit dans la presse, dans certaines déclarations, de contourner l'équipe de négociation, en la qualifiant de bureaucrate, technocrate, apatride, bruxellois, qui ne comprennent rien, et de dire on voudrait mener la discussion au niveau des chefs d'État. Cette tentative-là, elle a été faite plusieurs fois. Tous ceux qui chercheraient à diviser ou à trouver une différence entre ce que nous faisons, l'équipe de négociation, qui est votre équipe, et les 27 gouvernements, ils perdent leur temps. J'ai dit, c'est votre temps que vous perdez. Nous avons le temps. Hein. C'est votre temps que vous perdez. Puisque le clock is ticking.
What we should have, and I think what you have, Michel, in the back of your head all the time, is that actually we have a common objective to get rid of them in March 2019. It's not in our interest not to have deal at that stage. So for you, it's also in our interest to see whether we can say anything positive.
The EU stands strong and united against the UK, but internally the rivalries remain. Even within the Brexit steering group, arguments are quick to develop, over the fact, for instance, that Verhofstadt sometimes sees Michel Barnier on his own.
10 o'clock on the night. I would like to make one remark, because it doesn't look bad about it. After the round, we should go all three together to Barnier, not just you. No? It's a question of cooperation. We can do it all individually and have 3 meetings with Barnier.
Yeah, sorry, but I follow strictly what's in the mandate that has been decided by the Conference of Presidents. I do not more than that, I do not less than that, I follow that.
Is it written there that you can see him only alone?
No, there is written that I do the normal contacts with Barnier, so that's what I do as coordinator.
Yeah, but this is true, of course, and it's normal that you meet more than us because it's your job of coordinator, and this is another question. Of course, in this case, if we could have together a short debriefing, it's simply more useful. I mean, if it's possible, then if it's not possible, you go alone. Correct, Elmar? Did I better?
I've made remarks, and I'm sure that Guy will consider them. And I agree with you.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the corridor, Bram is working with Nick, Verhofstadt's press officer for the UK, on a statement about the negotiations. For the European Parliament, the citizens' rights are the most important issue, but it's a very technical matter.
For the European Parliament to approve for both direct descendants and dependent relatives, I would, direct dependent, I would say direct dependent relatives in ascending line. No? Direct, comma, and direct dependent relatives
of direct dependence.
What is this? What is this? This is Nick and I went through it to make it a bit more fluent reading for the press. That it needs to be understandable for people from the outside. This is like mathematics. The direct descendants and ascendants is already complicated enough.
The press release has to make clear that Verhofstadt is annoyed. He doesn't like the British proposal that EU citizens in the UK must apply to have their existing rights guaranteed after Brexit. If their application is accepted, the UK will give them so-called settled status, but an application can also be refused. Verhofstadt wants EU citizens to simply be able to declare that they want their rights continued.
Est mal foutu dès le début. Le timing, le concept, le nom. Et donc, on se bat toujours en retrait avec ces trucs-là. Est-ce que tu n'as pas un autre nom? Parce que ce serait bien de lancer un autre nom. European status.
Ouais, je sais pas.
Il n'y a pas de European citizenship, it's European status in Britain. Oh? Why you call it not like that?
I don't know, we can think about that.
It's, in politics, it's important that
if
you want to claim that you have one, you will need another name than settled state.
Moi je pense qu'il y a plus de chances d'arriver à faire des ajustements techniques qui changent fondamentalement machin, mais de garder le nom de settled status, que de faire l'inverse, qui est de changer le nom. Mais bon,
il faut demander les deux.
Faut demander.
Bon, allez, enfin, il faut changer le système de déclaration, application et tout ça, et puis à la fin de la négociation, dans la dernière nuit, dire ouais, mais c'est plus la même chose, donc il faut changer le nom.
Et trouver un nom qu'ils aimeraient aussi. Qui a un nom qu'ils aimeraient aussi, qui donne quand même l'impression que ils sont en contrôle. Parce que ce qu'ils aiment avec le settled state, je crois que c'est il y a l'élément de contrôle. Hein, c'est nous qui décidons. Hein.
Ah, ouais.
Late November 2017, the negotiations enter a crucial phase. The British urgently want to start talks about their future relationship with the EU. But Barnier insists on the agreed sequencing. First, there need to be sufficient progress on the 3 divorce issues. Rumours run that the financial settlement is sorted, but nobody knows for sure. Barnier's deputy, Sabine Weyand, and his assistant, Georg Riekeles, come to give the Brexit steering group an update.
The money. Yes, the money is an issue with the tabloid press, but not with the parliamentarians. Now, until we have it in writing and signed off by Theresa May in blood, you never know. On citizens' rights, of course, we are now zooming in on the outstanding issues, and that is normal. But that should not distract from the fact that we have actually achieved quite a lot in these negotiations.
This question of these children born in a new relationship after the Brexit that are not covered, why do children before covered? If that comes here, I can tell you, not only we are kept, but you also, so it will be everybody will be kept.
We fully agree on that, and I think it's very ugly because on the other hand, the UK wants to protect lawyers, but they don't want to protect children. Politically speaking, that is not really a good message to send, and that's what we are trying to drive home.
Could be worse than bankers and children.
I think they want to do bankers, lawyers, but not children. But maybe they will protect the children of bankers and lawyers. Not at all. No, but I mean, it is an issue, and of course we always tell the UK that's your problem that you're treating your citizens so badly, and you can simply change that by giving a better treatment to your own citizens. But I mean, politically, we have to see that is extremely difficult for them.
Okay, maybe we can go to the island, Northern Ireland now.
This has now become, over the last few weeks, probably the most intractable problem in the negotiations. I think it is, as on all other issues, it is only the Prime Minister who can, in the end, commit the government. What we know is that she is really very, very, very keen to have sufficient progress at the December European Council. And we are now testing how far that keenness takes her, both on the citizens' rights and on the Irish issue.
Toen wij de frietjes vallen zijn. Nog steeds weer komen.
Dat is al hier uit, hè? Nee, hoe laat wij?
Oké. Martien? Krijg je nazen. Als je die fles niet wegdroegt, dan ben je tussen de kloppen.
The moment of truth about sufficient progress arrives on Monday, the 4th of December 2017. Theresa May is flying into Brussels to discuss over lunch the last details of a deal.
Is there going to be a deal? Well, at the moment there is no deal. There is no agreement. Nothing today? No prospect today?
I'm optimistic that it is possible, 50-50. To have something, but we have to be sure that on citizens' rights everything is okay.
Yes. It seems that there is a deal on the money. So you're happy with that?
On the island. You know, that was always the request of the European Union, that it's not a question of a punishment, it is also not a question of whatever bill to be paid. It's normal that when you go out of an organization, honor your obligations. It's like in a divorce. Nobody can leave his wife and say, oh, the money's for you.
What an island, Mr. Verhofstadt.
In his rush to escape the media, Verhofstadt forgets a colleague from the Brexit steering group. Nobody in the EU really doubts that there is a deal, until Guillaume gets a message from Barnier's Norwegian assistant, Georg Riekeles.
There's no deal.
What?
No deal. Georg says there's no deal.
Yeah? No deal. That's what Georg says, no deal. Cette histoire de déclaration a foutu May en colère et elle a dit tant pis pour les citoyens Union Européenne.
Cool.
Mais non. What the fuck does that mean? Mais non.
Not the European Union's fault. We chose to leave the European Union. We chose to stay out of this country.
No deal, there's no deal. There's no deal, this time it's not Norwegian humour. He doesn't know the details, Georg. He's just passing on the message. It's not clear.
You see them next week.
Yes.
They're going to use against the meetings with you next week to say about there is no need.
Correct.
There is no need, we are busy. Because for the moment, this whole thing, and also their visits last week, was a joke. They had nothing to say. They have seen everybody of us.
The users.
The users. Sure. To show that they are busy.
We're rid of them! We kicked them out!
We finally turned them into a colony, and that was our plan from the first moment.
All the Romans get to me, Guy, can I become Belgian citizen after this whole because I don't think I will return.
Only Robins?
Only Robins.